Okay, welcome to the stream. Thanks everyone for joining. It's always really exciting to jump into a stream and see the chat building up already. So, yep, brilliant. Hopefully today we're going to have a much smoother ride. So I've done a lot of testing of a slightly new setup. So that's all fingers crossed for the stream tonight. Tonight's going to be a little bit different to the streams we've had so far. So the main idea of tonight's stream is we're going to be focusing on the Lua scripting with a little bit of UI. So it's going to be primarily kind of mostly within the editor experience. I'm joined by Sean and Adam again, and they're going to be helping me make a game. We're also building this game entirely from scratch. So anything you've seen before, we've used a starter template. This one, we thought it'd be interesting actually to show you kind of making a game from kind of the bare minimum that we provide in our empty slate. One thing just to start with, we will not actually, at least myself, I'm not going to be looking at the chat too much for questions. We're going to focus on the building to try and get some of the more technical points across. But of course, as always, make sure you are asking questions. We've got a handy team of mods who will be there happy to answer anything. So don't be offended if I don't answer straight away. We might maybe do a few questions at the end once we're finished, but at least for the duration of the stream, I'm going to do my best to focus on what we're trying to build. So yeah, let's just jump straight into it. Okay, hi guys, you should be on the stream now.
Hello. I'll run around a bit.
Yeah, are you there, Sean? Everyone appears to have vanished. Okay, so I'm here, as I say, with Adam and Sean. What we're going to do is we're going to build a game of football. So quite simple, just 2 goals and a ball, that sort of thing. Are you there now, Sean?
Yep, sorry. Yeah.
Yep, Sean's there. Cool. Okay. So while I'm going through building some of the components and talking you through some of the Lua scripts, Adam's going to focus on the sort of the main game script, and we will jump in there at some point to check in on what he's been doing and do a little bit of collaboration there with him. But for the most part, he's going to focus on getting that together. Sean's going to start off building our environment for us, so building our pitch, and he's going to jump in and help us with some UI. So let's get into it. First thing we're going to need for a game of football is, of course, a football. So I'm going to go to my library, and I'm going to search in here for football, and we've got a few to pick from. I'm going to go for this classic looking football, and I think I'm going to go for our jumbo one, just to kind of give it that like more cartoon edge. Okay, so that's there. Right, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to switch to our advanced mode. Most of the stream is going to take part in the advanced mode. As I say, we're sort of doing a slightly more technical stream. So here we're in advanced mode, and just for anyone who hasn't seen this yet, the advanced mode is where we're able to do a lot more of our sort of advanced operations. So things like the Lua scripting and the UI building and that sort of thing. So that's why we're going to be there for now. Okay, I can see someone else's drone flying around. Looking interested. There we go. Right. I guess that's you building the pitch there, Sean.
Of course.
Nice. Okay. Right. So let's move our football up. So the first thing we're going to want to do is enable physics. So what we can do is we come down. I'll just drag this out slightly. So we can come down here with our football selected and select this checkbox here, physics enabled. And just like that, this is now a physics-enabled entity, so it will act under the laws of physics. We can do such things like disable and enable gravity. We can override the mass. So actually for this, what I'm going to want to do is I'd like to change the mass of this ball to 0.5. So what that will do is just kind of set its default mass to half, and it makes it a little bit easier to kick around as a player. Okay, so now we've got a ball that we can kick around. We're going to need to add some logic to this now to make it behave in the way we want. And the way we do this is through the Lua scripts. So if I go to Entity here and select Add Script, see that Adam's already started on a game script. I'm going to create a new one here called Ball Script. Okay, so what we get now is our properties here. I'll just drag this up as well, actually, be able to see that a bit better. So we've got all of our entities here for the mass, and if I scroll down, we've now got this extra component added to the mesh, which is our script. I click on the small pencil. So now I've ended up in our code editor, and again you'll notice that we've not actually left Crayta at all. All of this is internal. So we do all of the coding within the Crayta editor itself. What we've got here is an example of sort of like the bare minimum we need for a script. So we have a table declared at the top, and we return that table at the end, and everything we do in between is building functions and assigning variables to that table. There's a lot of Lua sort of examples and tutorials online, so this kind of stream is going to focus more on how we use Lua within Crayta. There'll be some things that I might glaze over a little bit, but as I say, we're just going to kind of focus on the way that you interact with the entities and use the API within Crayta itself. So we'll ignore these properties for now, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But first thing we'll look at here is this function. So a function is sort of a block of code which can be executed when it's called upon, and then that block of code can contain sort of lines of instructions. The easiest way to think of it. As I say, we've got an API that sits in Crayta. So what we have here is we have a sort of a layer that sits between Crayta and the engine itself that we can access in Lua. Part of this is a script entry points. So in this script, we have certain entry points that are called, and this is an example of one here. We can see is this init function. So when the ball entity is created, the init function on any of the scripts is also fired. So we'll come back to that in a moment. But first, we're going to want to write our own script. And the first thing I want to do is write a reset function. So I'll get the ball to reset its position every time it reaches a certain part, either when it's been scored or when it's gone off the pitch. So to do this, we'll write function, ball script, and I'll call my function reset. Okay, so I can declare my own functions just like we see the init function at the top. And what I'm going to want to do here is set the position of the ball within 3D space. So to get to the sort of position function, I need to call self being this instance of this script. So anytime you want to access the entity that the script is attached to, you go through self. So it'd be self get entity. Okay, so what we've done here is we're accessing the entity that this script is attached to, which in this case is this football mesh. This entity could be anything from a light to a sound, an effect, a trigger, but in this case it's the mesh itself in the world. Okay, so from our entity, we're now able to access some more functions. So if I was to say set position, and at this point you'll notice that the API appears actually in the code editor to give you an idea of the sort of functions that are built into Crayta that you're able to access. So in this case, set position, and what I need to provide to that is a 3D vector, a position in space. So we'll say position. So what we want this position to be is where the ball started from. So in order to capture that, let's look at our init function. So what we're going to want to do here is actually capture when the ball was created, what position in 3D space did it start from. In this case, we want to assign this to a variable. So a variable is a sort of small piece of information that we can store sort of anything we want in terms of like numbers, strings. In this case, we're going to want to store the 3D positional vector. So again, if we say self, which is this instance of this script, dot start position, and that start position, I can call that whatever I'd like because this is my variable. So self.start position equals self get entity. So again, I want to refer to the mesh I'm attached to, and this time I'm going to use get position. So this is going to return me the 3D position of the ball. I don't need to provide any other information. That's just going to return me a vector into my self.start position. So now I'm able to access this self.start position from other functions. So here I can say self.start position. Okay, so what we've got here is when ball script reset is called, we're going to access the script, the entity attached to it, and we're going to set its position to this recorded start position. So it's quite straightforward, but hopefully that's starting to give an idea of the layers of how things sort of layer up. So you've got your scripts and your entities and your methods and that sort of thing. Okay. Oh, wow. So I've returned to the game and I can see the guys have made some pretty good progress so far on the pitch itself. So that's really good.
Football.
Okay, so you created some goals. So, or created one goal. That's good. So I'll take this goal and I'm going to sort of set this up and I'll template it for the other side. So similar to how we had the football, I'm going to rename this to goal. Okay, and instead of actually attaching a script to the goal itself, what I'm going to want to do is create a trigger child of this goal. So while with the goal selected, I can go to Entity, Create Child Trigger, and we'll call this goal trigger. Okay, so now I've got this goal trigger box. We're able to access different script entry points, as I've mentioned before, but like init. So we'll be able to do things like an on trigger enter, on trigger exit. So I'm just going to move this into sort of a more central position. I'm going to specify a size. So let's go for 800 by 300 by 300. And that should create a sort of trigger box, which roughly sort of covers the size of the goal. So that should be fine. Okay, so now I'm going to want to attach a script to this entity. So we'll call this goal trigger script. Okay, so once again, we've now got our goal mesh with a trigger child entity. And then this trigger has this goal trigger script attached to it. And if I click this small pencil, you know, I'm going to get another script. And again, it's got that sort of default template at the start. Okay, so what we're going to want to do here is access some of the sort of trigger specific script entry points. So at this point, we're going to say function goal trigger script on trigger enter. And again, we see the API suggests, as I've started typing, it suggests what I might want to do. So I hit tab. And what this function does, it actually passes to the script the entity that has entered the trigger. So we'll call that entity. Okay, and what that allows us to do at this point is to start sort of interrogating that entity to work things out about, you know, what it is, whether we need to care about the fact it's entered the trigger. And again, that's kind of down to the creator what they're trying to achieve with this. In this case, what I need to do is work out, is this an instance of the football? So in order to do that, we need to tell this script what the football is. And that's where our properties come into effect. So if I just clear this example here, so properties can be defined and actually exposed to the front end down in this bottom corner here where the goal trigger script is. So in this case, I'm going to say name, and I want this to be called the football entity. Okay, and the type of this property is an entity. And that type will determine how it's displayed in the bottom. If I now save this script with Control S, we'll see that this football entity property has appeared down here at the bottom. Okay, and if I just scroll here, you can see that I've got a world tree to filter through to try and find that entity. But to make things slightly easier, I can also drag down from the world tree itself. So there we go, I've dragged down football jumbo and that's appeared there. Okay, cool. So what I can do now is I can determine, has the entity that came into my is the entity that came into my trigger the same as the football entity itself? Okay, so if entity is equal to self.properties football entity, then okay, so simple if statement. Again, I think anyone who's used any sort of scripting languages or code before will sort of see how if statements are kind of a really powerful way of just determining paths of logic. So in this case, so it's just a simple if entity is equal to the football entity, then give me, then sort of step into this logic. And in this case, we're just going to say to the football entity, let's reset. So entity send to scripts reset. Okay, so what we're doing there is we're saying, okay, for this entity, let's send a message to all of the scripts attached to it, and that message is reset as a string. So what that's going to do is that's going to find this reset function that we have in the ball script. That's going to reset the position. Okay, well, you guys are really making some progress. Really good. So,
Yeah, chopping along.
do you think we're ready for a quick test? Are you guys happy to see how this behaves?
Yep.
Okay. I will tell you what I do need to do. I need to create the other goal first. But let's just do that quickly. So we'll just create a template of that goal. So again, we'll cover this in other streams, but a template is a collection of assets. So it's going to collect those two entities and that script together and give me a version that I can now find in my templates. And I can now position this, and it's going to behave in the same way as the other goal with the trigger inside of it. Okay, so I'm going to hit the play button and we'll see how this behaves now. So there we are, we've got a ball that we can now kick around.
Hey.
So if we can try and get that into one of the goals, see if we can do that between us.
Oops.
There we go. Nice. And we'll see that that's now reset itself into the middle. So one thing we can see here, the ball is resetting its position, but there's some things that it's not resetting, like its velocity and rotation. So we can go ahead and have a look at that now. So I'm going to press F5 and we'll return to the editor. Maybe if one of you guys could set up a trigger around the edge of the pitch and maybe do like an on-trigger exit to reset at that point as well.
I
Okay.
think you broke up a bit there, Sean.
Yep.
Cool. I'll leave that to you guys. So what we might want to do on our reset script here is also just call some more functions. So we've got self entity set velocity. And we want that to be a vector 0. That's going to reset the velocity and stop the ball from moving as soon as we remove it. Adam, you mentioned that there's a rotational velocity that we can set as well.
There is, yeah. I think it's literally set rotational velocity or set rotation velocity. Which script are you in? I'll come and have a look.
I'm in the ball script. Set angular velocity.
That'll be it.
That'll be it. Okay, so again, we can see that it requires a rotation. So we'll do a rotation dot 0. Okay, so that should stop the ball from spinning. Cool. Okay, well, that's been good so far. So now we've got football and 2 goals pretty quickly. The guys have done a really nice job with this. Now I think what we're going to need to do is set up some scoring. So we're going to want a score to appear on the screen, and we're going to want the score to sort of register when the ball goes into the goal and that sort of stuff. So the first thing we're going to want to do is a score script and a bit of UI on the user. So this brings you into play, Sean, if you want to come over in a minute when you're done with that. So what I'm going to do is I've just gone to my user template, and what we're in now, excuse me. what we're in now is our sort of dedicated template view for the user. So first, let's create a script folder. The script folder is a little bit like an entity. It doesn't have a physical representation, but it just allows us to sort of order our hierarchy and sort of organize our scripts especially. I'm going to call this score UI. And then to this script folder, I'm going to add two things. I'm going to add a new score UI script. And I'm also going to add a UI widget. Okay, so the widget, as you can see here, is sort of another component that we add to the entity. And we get a few different options that come with this. So for example, we can toggle to certain visibility, so whether it's something everyone sees or whether certain players sees. We can determine an order in terms of sort of the layers of the UI. And we can also switch the type of UI. So we have types. Here we've got the screen, which will be like a heads-up display. So like your classic health bar, radar, that sort of thing. We have world. So world is actually a 3D UI that will sit in 3D space and can be rotated and positioned as you like. And world camera facing is actually very similar, but instead what that will do is it'll always face towards players to give that sort of billboarded effect. So different types of UI that you can use there, but we're going to focus just on screen UI for today. So if I jump in to edit this score widget, and Sean, if you wouldn't mind helping me in this one. Cool. So what we're going to look for here, I think, Sean, if you just want to tidy up some of these things, you'll notice I'm in a very similar looking code editor. And actually at this point, for all intensive purposes, it functions in exactly the same way. But what we have here is a HTML file. So all of the UI coding is done in HTML with CSS and JavaScript. Hopefully you can see that. It's starting to break up a little bit. So while Sean just sorts those bits out, I can see him coding here. So this is the first little glimpse for some people perhaps that are collaborative code editing. So I'm not actually typing here. We can see that Sean's in the script with me. So all of the code editors, whether it's Lua scripting or widget scripting, you can actually work together in real time in code, which is a really neat, nice little function. It's a really good tool for learning as well as sort of really quick, fast development. I can see that Sean's pretty much running away with this, which is great. So if I just select from here, I can choose to say split the source editor modes. So rather than having to be full screen widget or full screen editor or full screen game, I can choose to put the source editor sort of either right, left, top or bottom of the screen. So if I say bottom, that's going to split my code down to the bottom and keep my game up on the top, which is really nice. Again, to sort of organize the what you can see on screen. So while Sean's working on that,
yep.
How are we doing? Class. Cool. Okay, so once you save this, we should see some UI appear, hopefully.
Should be getting there. Let me just stick it on the top.
Okay, do you want me to do anything, or are you happy with that?
I think we should be getting up soon.
Okay. So what? Oh, there we go. Okay, so we see this UI is now appeared. So I think that just needs a flex row. And then that should. Let's pop away. There we go. Okay, and that's changed. So we can see Sean's working on it. That's not a problem. Again, that's the beauty of it is we can kind of collaborate and work on this together. So I'm going to leave you to run with that for now, and we'll come back and have a look at how nice that looks in a moment. What I'm going to do in the meantime is I'm going to start populating our UI score script. I'm just going to pop back into the full screen version. Okay. So what we see here is, again, back in the Lua side of things, and we're going to need to code things slightly different here. So one of the big benefits of Crayta is that you do all of your sort of Lua coding for server and client within the same script. You don't have to have separate server scripts and separate client scripts. You can sort of pass control back and forth within the same scripts. So much like how we have the init at the very top of the script here, we also have access to things like a client init. So this will be for particularly when the client side initializes, whereas the init is for the server. So what we want to do here is refer to the widget itself, so we get a copy of the widget that we can then sort of come back to throughout the script. So I'm going to say self.widget, which again is just my word for widget, equals self get entity, and then I can say dot score widget. Okay, and what that's going to do is that's going to get here. Oh, I can remove this self default property. So that's going to sort of refer back to the entity and reach and grab this score widget here that we're talking about. Okay, so next we're going to want a function that will update this. So that when a goal is scored, everyone gets an updated UI. So we'll call this update score UI, and that will take a score 1 and score 2 for either side of the for each team. Okay, so next let's go for what we need to do is make sure. So as I said, we're kind of coding in we're coding in server and client side at the same time here. So if this function, this update score UI function, was called from a server, we need to always make sure that we're going to pass control to the client in order to get the UI to update properly. So we can do this with a quick check. So we say self get entity is local. Okay, and that will check that if where we are now in terms of control of the code is with the local client, then we're okay to continue. Otherwise, we need to send control to the local client. So we'd say self get entity send to local. So this will send the message through to the local client, and what we want to do is just pass this function we're in basically. So it's kind of like a quick little recursive call. And we also want to make sure we pass the 2 scores along with that. Okay, so that will guarantee we're always going to be referring to the widget from the client. So we can say self.widget to refer back to our variable from before, .js, so for the JavaScript, dot, and now let me just refer back to the widget. I see Sean's still busy typing away. So we've got this model here that Sean has set up. So this is our sort of data model that will bind in to the HTML. So for example, we've got team 1 score and team 2 score on our score model. And then here with our sort of data binding, which comes from the game face sort of middleman, we're actually able to sort of bind in that number to the UI. That's how we kind of create the dynamic UIs. So in this case, data bind value score model team 1 score will, each time we update that model, it will kind of pump that through to the UI, and it will represent whatever number it is, so 0 or 2 in this sort of example case. So JS score model dot team 1 score is equal to score 1, and then again we can copy this line and we can do the same for team 2 score and score 2. So what we'll get there is those numbers will come through. It'll update the model in the JavaScript, and then it will automatically refresh and represent those numbers on the front end. Okay, so now we've got that. If I just stop editing this template, I'm going to come back to our game. See, Adam's working on some nice shiny secrets in here. Nice shiny code.
Indeed.
Okay, so what we're going to need to do now is obviously track that score. So when a goal is scored, we need to not just reset the ball, but we need to actually fire a function somewhere to say that a goal has been scored. We can track that score and then update all the users. So Adam, you're working on the game script. Are we about ready to add in that function, you think?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm going to come and join you in the game script itself. Okay, so I can see Adam's here busy typing away with his orange cursor. Go put the function here. Okay, yeah, that looks good.
Okay, so this is for when a goal is scored, right?
Yeah, so go ahead if you want to type this. I'll just
Sure.
I'll see what you're doing. I'll help where I can.
So do you want me to sort of talk through how
Yeah,
the function is
go
going
on.
to work
Yeah,
as I go?
yeah, that'd be easier.
So as you've explained, we set up a function here that's part of the game script, and we're taking one parameter in this one, which is the team number. So this is either going to be 1 or 2 based on which team's goal has just been scored in. So then we can do a really simple if statement here to say if the team number is 1, then we need to up team 1's score, and we've already saved team 1's score as a variable,
Right.
which is called team 1 score, and we essentially just increment that variable by 1.
Cool. And I guess, yeah, obviously team 2 do the same.
Yep. And I might as well just copy and paste the logic there and swap it for team 2 score.
Okay, cool.
And then finally, after we do that, we need to let all the users know, and any part of the game that needs to know what the score's updated to. So I've actually set up an event in my properties bag at the top, which is called onScoreChanged. And we can simply say send on that and send both of those scores. And then anything that listens to that event will be able to pick up the 2 scores and do whatever it wants with it, which in the case of the users will be displaying it on their UI.
Right, gotcha. So I'll go find that event just while you've finished doing that. So
sure.
So events are a really handy way of actually linking logic up. So we've seen one way of doing it where I've said to sort of do it like a send to scripts on an entity when we've defined it, but you don't always necessarily know exactly what entity and exactly what message. But sometimes you might want to loop to sort of lots of entities in one go. So what we can do here is we can see here in the properties that Adam's set up this onScoreChanged event. So if I hit the plus here, that's going to allow me to sort of add another listener for this event. So this is basically going to be something that wants to know when the score changes. If I open this up, I can see I need to pick an entity. So not only can we pick entities from the world, but we can also pick all instances of a template. Because at runtime, we might have a varying number of users, and we don't necessarily know what that exact user entity will look like. But for this, it's really useful. We can say, okay, for every instance of a user, let's go to their score UI, the score UI script folder, find the score UI script, and it's found that by default because it's the only script there. And the event we need to call is update score UI. Okay, so what that means is when that event fires and a goal is scored, we're going to go through every user and we're going to update their UI. What we need to do next is Adam's written this onGoal script for us, sorry, this onGoal function. We now need the goals to tell the game when a goal is scored. So that's going to need us to return to our goal trigger script. So here, let's say name goal scored, and that's a type of event. So that's going to give me an event in very much the same way. So let's just go to our goal templates. So here, this is the template I created earlier, and we can see that I'm in this sort of isolated template view for this. So let's go to goal trigger and goal scored. And again, we need to set this up. But instead of being all instances of a template, we're going to say we want this to be a specific entity that knows about this, and it'll be the game script. Again, it's found the game script because that's the only script on the game entity. And the event we're going to call is our team number. So notice here it's letting us know that the onGoal function also needs a team number. So what we're going to have to do is adjust our goal trigger script slightly to know which team scores a point in this goal. And we're going to do that again through the use of a property. So this will be team who scores of type number. Okay, so we could leave it as that, and we could type a 0 or a 1 or a 2 or any number we want in there. But what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to show you a way that we can sort of really start to refine the properties that appear. So in this case, let's say goal trigger script dot options, let's say team numbers equals, and set up a new table. And tables come up a lot in Lua. What we'll do here is we'll define certain numbers that can appear for this option. So we'll say 1 or 2. So it could be team 1 or it could be team 2. So I can now extend this property further than just a name and a type, and I can say options equals goal trigger script dot team numbers. Okay, so when I hit save now, we notice that we've got a drop down that appears here with just the options 1 or 2. So let's also set up a default. So default is 1. So now when I save, anytime that I create a new instance of this goal trigger, the default will be 1, and the front end user who's going to use this script, so perhaps a game designer on your team, or just someone wanting to come in and sort of play with some numbers and not necessarily go in and get sort of into the scripting side, and pick which team it is just from the drop down there. So that's just one way you can sort of really start to refine how players will use your scripts. Okay, so next thing we want to do is we want to say, now we've got this event set up and the team is going to score here, we need to say to sort of fire that event off. So just like Adam did, we'll say self.properties.goalscored send. So send being let's fire this message to everything that's registered to listen to it. And what we'll need to do here is pass in that self.properties team who scores. So that will let the game script know which team has scored. That will update the scores as required, and then that will fire an event to let all of the users know that the score's updated, and it will update. Okay, so how are you guys getting on with your side of things?
Yeah, pretty good. I'm just setting up all the spawn points for both of the teams now. I'm
Okay.
dragging those into the arrays, the spawn arrays on the game.
Okay, cool. So you think we're almost ready for a quick test again?
I would say so in about 2 minutes, yeah.
In about 2 minutes? Okay. What I might do,
get these spawns in place.
What I'll do for now then while you set that up is I'm just going to add in a little bit more here. So it'll be nice that if a goal is scored, if we could sort of add a little bit more flair, a bit more exciting when a goal is scored rather than just the ball reset. So let's add a couple more variables or a couple more properties here. Let's say goal scored sound, and that will be a type of sound asset. And let's also say goal scored effect, and that will also be type effect asset. Okay, so if I just go back and select my goal trigger, so when I save this script, we'll have 2 more properties appear down here, and notice how these by default have come in the drop down. So each of these drop downs will actually link back to the library. So this will allow me to pick a sound asset. So we'll get the sound to play when a goal is scored. I think a good one is the horn. So if I go for a win streak air horn, I can trial the sound here. That sounds about right. And same for the effect. So let's search the effect for portal energy burst is a good one. So that will play a little effect when the ball goes into the goal. Okay, so after we've sent the event, we want to play this sound. So sounds are played in different ways. You can either play them sort of at specific locations, or sort of just play them as like a sort of a sound for everyone to hear. So in order to play sound, we need an entity in which to play it from. So in this case, again, we'll go for our get entity, so our entity that the script is attached to, and we'll say play a sound. And all we need to provide to this is a sound asset, which will be our properties.goalscoredSound. Okay, nice and straightforward. Next one we might want to do a little bit differently. So the effect would be nice if it played kind of where the ball entered the goal. So again, we'll go to our entity and we'll say play effect at location. Okay, and what this is going to require from us, as we can see from the API on the screen, is a location, a rotation, and the asset itself to play. So for the location, we have our entity that's passed to this function is the ball. So what we can do is actually lean on that, and we can say entity, which is a ball, get position, and that's going to return as our 3D space of where the ball is. Rotation, we're not too bothered about at this point, so we can just say new, and that is just a 0 rotation. And for the effect itself, again, we're just going to go to self.properties, goal scored effect. Okay, there we go. Right, think you're ready, Adam?
Yes.
Yep, cool. Okay, and because I've set these things on my template, if I come back here, we should see that the goal on either side has also inherited those. So the beauty of using templates in that case is that you do it in one place and it will sort of push those changes out to all of the children, all of the instances. Okay, I'm going to hit play. Let's see what happens. Oh, Sean UI sitting just behind the lobby, so we'll go and fix that in a moment. But we can see that there's a bit of a scoreboard sitting there just behind that lobby. Okay, and if the ball goes into the goal, oh,
sorry.
Or if it goes off the pitch, we should see it reset. So it did, and it's reset nicely, so it's not spinning around anymore. If Sean scores a goal, we get an effect, an air horn, and all that stuff going. So cool. Okay, we know that logic's working. That's quite nice fun. So I think the final thing I might want to add actually is, or one of the final things, so I'm just going to press F5 to go back to the editor, is to sort of lean on the physics a little bit more of Crayta. So what might be quite fun is when the ball goes into the goal, there's a little bit of a blast and players get knocked around, and that might be quite fun. If you guys maybe want to start setting up a bit of a high score, that might be quite fun. So we can start to record how many times a certain player's won a game of the football. And yeah, Sean, if you just want to have a look at that UI and maybe stick it at the bottom of the screen, might get it completely out of the way. That'd be good. Okay, so let's return to our goal trigger script. Cool. So there's a few things we can do here just to show this off. So as I say, when a goal is scored, I want to sort of have an option to choose to sort of blast the players around. So just to show off a few more of the properties, we can go for launch players, and this will be of type Boolean. And we'll set that as a default to true. Okay, so goal trigger now we can see has this checkbox as an option. So again, changing the type to a Boolean here, we can change the way that the property appears on the front end to the users. And what I also want to provide here is a vector in which to launch the players by. So launch vector, which will be a sort of 3 coordinates basically. Again, that will be of type vector. Okay. One thing we can do to sort of keep the properties tidy, as you can see, we're starting to build up a few now, and obviously things like the game script, for example, has a lot, and some more complex scripts will have quite a lot start to build up. So what we can do here is we can sort of link these two properties together. So in this case, I'm going to say visible if, and visible if will require a function to determine whether it can be displayed or not. Okay, I'm going to pass a function here which just takes the properties and returns true or false depending on the logic you want to link them by. So in this case, it will just be properties dot launch players equal to true. Okay, so if we read that back, we'll see that if launch players is equal to true, then it will be visible. So here, if I uncheck this, we now see that that vector disappears. Because again, if we're not launching players, then there's no point in having that vector there. So again, just a nice way to keep that neat and tidy. So let's set that to, in fact, let's set that here as a default. So the default for this is a vector.new with 2000 in the z-axis. So all the players should just fly straight up into the air. Okay, so what we're going to want to do now is a bit of a loop to kind of go through all the players in the world. But also, instead of resetting the ball straight away, we might want to delay that slightly. So if I say name equals reset time and have a type of number for that, and the default for that will be 5. So after 5 seconds, we'll get the ball to reset. So what we want to do at this point is a schedule. Okay. Okay, so a schedule allows us to sort of take a little bit of code and run that in a what we call a separate thread. And that essentially allows us to do things like pausing. So we can pause the execution of that for a certain amount of time before we come back to it. And that just allows us to get logic to kind of not interfere with the main loop of the game or stall or any of those sort of slightly more complex approaches. But what it does allow us to do, as I say, is kind of pause the execution and wait for certain things to happen. Okay, so first thing we're going to want to do is want to go through all of our players in the world. So again, we have some built-in things that we can lean on here. So we can say get world, and world refers to the world object. And from the world object, we can refer to sort of all sorts of different methods and functions. I'm going to say get world for each user. Okay, and then this function requires a callback function, which will be basically what we want to do for each user. So for each user, function user end. I'll keep that there. Okay, so for every user, we want to say if the user get player. So if the user has a player, that's equal to true. Then let's launch the player by a certain amount. So there's this if user get play is just a little guard, because if we try and launch the player assuming the user has one, that might cause a crash. So we'll say user get player launch, and launch is a built-in API call. And we want to launch by a vector. So our vector will be our self.properties launch vector. Okay. And then finally, we want to wait a little bit of time before we actually do the reset. So we just call wait. So again, wait is a global function, and that needs a time. If you don't provide a time, it'll wait for a single frame, which is useful in some cases. But in this point, we want to say, okay, let's wait for a set amount of time. And that time is a reset time. Okay, I should just say first thing we want to do again around all of this is to say we have this function or this property for whether to launch the players or not. So if self.properties launch players equal to true, then okay, and let's just select all of this, indent it and hit end. So this will only run if we want to launch the players. Otherwise, let's just reset the ball. Okay, so that should all be set up and ready. How are you guys getting on with UI for the high score?
I'm not sure how Sean's getting on, but I've written the Lua side of it. I'm just looking now and it looks like he's done the UI side, so cool. They should go together nicely.
Cool. Okay, yeah, I can see that. I think we probably need to move this UI for the score down to the bottom of the screen just so it doesn't sit over the lobby. But games won equal to 5. Okay, I can see that. So what we're going to want to do now is have a little function on the user to sort of save and load that number. So let's add a new script.
Oh, I started writing those for you already in the score UI script.
Okay, cool. I'll jump into there.
Sorry,
that's fine. That's pretty handy. Okay, cool. I can see that. So on game 1, we set save data. So okay, so what we've got here is an example of sort of our built-in save and loading logic. So we have the get entity. We say on this entity, let's save the data, and this, because we're on the user, we're allowed to do that. And what we're saying is the games one is the games one variable, so that's going to store that against the user. I'll set up the load side of it now.
Cool.
So score UI script load. So it's quite similar in that we just need to sort of retrieve the data against the user. So here we'll say self. I just thought the set save data item is on the script, not on the entity. So you'll want to get rid of that get entity. Yeah. So it's not the entity itself, it's the script that does that. So, and we can see that because we say get save data. So here it's telling us that it's a script function and not an entity function. And what that needs is a callback. So like we've done a few times before, we need to pass a function to this to know how to process the save data. Okay, so now we've got that. First we want to check that save data is valid. So if save data, if it wasn't valid, if it was nil, then it would get past this. But if save data then, and we want to assign it to our variable, so that will be self games1 equals save data dot games1. Okay, so there we can see that if we've got some data, we're going to assign that to our self.games1 variable. That variable is then used, so when a game is won, we'll go through and increment that by 1 and then save that against the user, and then update the front end UI to reflect that. So all the same things we've been doing so far. Again, you can see Adam's here, he's got his loop, he's got his little check in place to make sure we're on the client. One other thing we can do here, so a useful tool for coding on Crayta is using the console. So we can print things to the console for debugging, and we can sort of format that print statement to get variables out to the front end. So let's do that here. So let's say printf, and again, we can see from the API that's appeared that we need to provide a string, a format, and some arguments. This will be data loaded 4, and let's say 1, with games1 equal to 2. Okay, so that's our string with a sort of format of curly braces around the 1 and the 2. And now we need to provide a comma separated list of variables that will get replaced. So the first variable we put here will sit where 1 is in that string, second one 2, so on and so forth. So data loaded for 1, I want that to be the user's username. So because we're on the user, we can say self get entity get username. And again, that's a built-in function that works because we're on the user here. So against the user entity, we can retrieve the user's username. And the second thing is we want the games1, which we just retrieved with and stored into self.games1. Okay, and close that off. So that was set as a little print statement there.
I'll just mention now, Russ, that the on game1 gets called from the game script. I just added that in on the results part of the game script.
Okay, cool. That makes sense.
Just in case.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I think the last thing we might need to do then is obviously when we load, we need something, or when the game starts, we need to sort of call for the player information to load. So we'll do that on our game script. I think you've already got an on users login here somewhere.
Yep. Around line 118.
Yeah, I can see that. Cool. Okay, so again, this is just another example of one of the entry points that you get sort of through the API of Crayta. This is on user login. So when a user logs into the game, we pass that user entity to this function, and we can do things. So here, Adam set up the logic around spawning. Probably tell, yep, so I'm going to do that here. So let's say user enter scripts load. Okay, so that's given us our sort of user. We've sent to all the scripts on the user to say any function that has a load function, let's call it. That's going to land us here on this load. Okay, all this is looking lovely, guys. It's really nice every time I come back out of the code window to see what you guys have done. Looking really good.
Cool.
Nice little voxel signs as well. So, okay, have we forgot anything, or do you think we're good to go?
I think we're probably good to go. I'm sure something will break and fall down. But
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, I'll go team red. You guys go team blue.
Okay.
See how that works. Okay, I'm going to press F5 and we're going to go into preview and we'll give this game a spin. So it looks like there's an issue already on the UI for the score because it's saying it's got the default numbers there.
Yeah.
So let's just check.
Yeah, just doing so good, we're winning already.
Yeah, let's just check, see what happens when the goal is scored. Okay, and we didn't boost either. Okay, let's just jump back and have a quick look and see what we've got. So if we go to the console as well, we should see here that we've got some things that have appeared around messages that are built in. So the score script called this, that's a built-in message. And here we can see that data was loaded by Sean with games 1 being 0. Data loaded for me, data loaded for Adam. So that's our script throwing that console log out, which is really, really useful way to debug stuff. So I think what we might need to do, guys, is get that UI to update at the start. I think that might be the problem. So if we go to the user script, and if we do that on client init, and we just pass 0, 0, or if you've got something in your game script that might do that, Adam?
Just thinking, no, you should probably update it then.
Yeah, okay. So
have you hooked in the goal scored event from the
let me double check.
game entity UI?
Let me double check. So the goal triggers.
No, from the game entity itself, right?
Game entity will call, yeah. So on score changed, it will update the score UI.
Okay.
Okay, that takes score 1, score 2. Yeah, let me just check I've got the right stuff here. So score model, team 1 score, team 2 score. Okay, that should work.
I just realized.
Yeah.
Once we've loaded the number of games won, we should probably redisplay it.
Okay.
Because we'll have the correct number then.
Yeah, that will work.
Just add that in.
The joys of live coding. Okay, so I've seen there's plenty of chat going on, which has been really nice. So keep those questions coming in and we'll do our best to keep answering those. Mods are doing their best, I imagine.
I'm not sure if you broke up for anyone else there, but you really broke up for me.
Oh, well, we'll see. So I was just saying, hopefully the mods are doing a really good job. So there's plenty of questions coming in. So just while we try and work out what's going on here, we'll just keep those questions coming in.
That was very, very robotic sounding. But I don't know, maybe it's just me. Maybe. Something's...
Okay, so I'm going to look at my trigger script to see why the players didn't launch. Okay, can you guys hear me okay?
Not really.
Okay, can you hear me, Sean? You okay?
Yeah, you're okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds fine on stream. Yeah, I think it's just you, Adam. Oh, thankfully, it's not me.
Okay, then.
Okay, so have we got any clues as to what's going on here? Oh, I think I bet I've left that unchecked. Yeah, looks like Adam's internet's caught the bug. Okay, so I think we just about got to the end of that demo without any problems. So it looks like okay, so it looks like there's potential Discord having problems. Okay, so apologies if Adam and Sean have dropped from the background slightly. I'm going to do my best with if I'm stranded. As I say,
I think you're back now. Hello.
I'm back. Yeah. So okay, I'm not sure what's going on with Discord there, but that's going to sort of throw a bit of a spanner in the works. But hopefully everyone's had a good idea of sort of the things that we can do in Crayta in terms of the Lua coding and sort of the various options. There's a whole load more power behind the API that we didn't quite get around to today. But yeah, so that's been that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so one final crack at this. Okay.
If you were looking at that issue in the goal trigger script, Russ, I just got in and fixed that.
Oh, okay, did you? Cheers.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, fine. Right, I think if we update the score at the start, it should give us a better score to appear. So you guys ready for another test?
Absolutely.
I see the score's still showing 0-2, but we've got our games one working. Maybe if you score a goal, it'll reset. Oh, we get thrown in the air. Oh, I just noticed someone's put in a rotating scoreboard. Very nice.
Around the map. Ooh. Sorry. Should we just test actually scoring a goal?
Yeah.
Hey.
You can get thrown around in the air. Okay, well,
I can see something going on in the console now.
have we got some errors?
For the score UI.
Finally got some errors. Center local not spotted. Okay, that's probably something I've done.
Sounds like you tried to do something on all the clients rather than just on the local
I wonder if is it this date score?
This should be a local init, not client init at the very top.
Is that the problem?
That would be one of the things, I imagine.
Line 62. So again, it's kind of a good example actually of the sort of routine you might go through in Crayta. So the console doesn't just serve out things that you've put there for it to serve, it'll actually throw the errors out. So where I've obviously missed something. Score UI 62. Self get entity center local. Is that just a center local might be a, oh no, it could go either side. Any ideas there?
Just having a look now. Certainly looks like it should be correct.
It does look like it, doesn't it? Scoreboard UI, line 50 and line 62. So line 50, I'm doing center local there. Good.
Yep, so those all look correct now.
Okay.
Should explain why it wasn't updating at the start.
Okay, so
why
let's
it's not updating now, I'm not sure.
Okay, well let's preview again. Now we've fixed that first issue and see if they come back. Having issues there.
Ah, there we go.
Okay. Kick the ball out. Right, let's score a goal. There we go. Okay, still no points coming through. All right, we'll have one last crack at this. I won't let this defeat us. let's trace it through. So game script does on goal, on score change, team 1 score and team 2 score. Yeah.
Yeah, that looks correct. So that should fire off the event, which goes to all users.
And that calls update score UI. So update score UI takes 2. Self-get entity is local. Updates score model dot team 1 score with score 1. We haven't ended up with 2 score UI functions in here, have we? Nope.
All looks fine to me.
Okay, that all looks fine. Score 1, score 2. Okay, the model is score model, and that's team 1 score, team 2 score. I found out what it is. It's uppercase S. There we go. We've got the sneaky. Right, I'm going to be confident and hit play.
Yeah, that'll do it. Yes.
There we go.
Oh no. What did you do to the games one?
That's because I think that was because we changed it at the start. That's fine. We'll go with this. Red scores. Okay, right. Let's play 2 minutes. I'm blue. You're red. Let's see who can win.
Who am I? I'll just take whichever side.
Wait. So you're trying to score in my goal, in the blue goal. I'm trying to score in the red goal.
I see. Maybe I feel like we should put ramps or something on the sides of the pitch so the ball doesn't roll out. So
yeah, we could do. We could run with it. I feel like it's quite difficult when it's 2v1. Oh, that's going to be an own goal.
No, Sean.
Celebration.
Okay, Russ is definitely going to win this one, I reckon.
What?
Come on, Sean. Sean, I crossed it to you. Where?
No, I haven't played Rocket League for so long.
Go, Sean.
Needs more cars. Right. No, own goal.
Yes.
Oh, I think the goals are still set to be the same team, so it incremented my score. But again, that's just a quick property change, so cool. Okay, so as you can see, it's been we're about an hour now, and we've managed to create this game, completely from scratch. Looks like a lot of code, but actually, once you start to break it down, it's quite straightforward. Super powerful, super flexible for you to sort of jump in and start playing on, playing with it yourself. So, okay, I think we should go back to the editor quickly. And I think that might be a good place. If Discord's having a bit of trouble, this might be a good place to start wrapping this up anyway. So, yeah, that's been the first of a few of this sort of style of stream where we kind of break down sort of a more particular part of Crayta. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to us here on YouTube. We've got tons of stuff coming out in the next up and coming weeks. So really excited to start sharing more stuff with you. Hopefully the stream's held together a bit better tonight. I've noticed a few kind of quality warnings pop up, but generally we've held together till the end, which has been nice. So we're getting there. Hopefully, by the next couple of streams, we're going to be much more in there. Thanks, Adam and Sean, for joining, and thank you to all the mods for helping out in the chat. It's been super useful, super helpful. But yeah, we can always keep working on this game, and I'm sure it can come out at some point for people to get their hands on and play. Anything else want to plug? So yeah, make sure again all of our social media. So you go over to the Discord channel, join there constantly. We do our best to be as active in there as we can, answering questions. So if anything didn't get answered on the stream and you want to ask that, go to Discord and ask it there. Check out the videos we've currently got on our YouTube channel. As I said, just make sure you subscribe to us here. Yeah, this has been Crayta. So we're coming exclusively to Stadia this summer, which is super exciting. So yeah, thank you everybody. Thanks for the help, and we'll see you in the next stream.